Now, I'd like to take a minute to introduce our student moderators. These are all seniors here at Whitfield Academy who have tried out for the opportunity to serve here tonight. We have, to my right, Davis Eden, Lindsay Mills, and Will Thomas. They are going to introduce our candidates.
Alex Backery has lived in Smyrna for 35 years. He worked for animal control in Smyrna for 40 years. He also worked in airline industry for 20 years. Mr. Backery has volunteered for the Department of Natural Resources in rehabilitating orphan wildlife. Mr. Campbell has lived in Smyrna for 18 years. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree and a Master's of Science degree from the University of Alabama. He is a Smyrna small business owner operating Chris's Caribbean Bistro with his father, Chris Campbell. He is also a financial planner and founder of Uplift Financial. Mr. Campbell and his wife, Jasmine, live in the Smyrna Grove subdivision.
Ms. Morales is a Smyrna resident. She is a veteran of the United States Air Force, where she served in law enforcement. In the early 90s, she worked for the Atlanta Braves in operations. She is currently a community volunteer and entrepreneur as the owner of Daniel's Floors.
Mr. Norton has lived in Smyrna for 15 years. He is a graduate of the University of Georgia and previously worked for Johnny Isaacson in his congressional and U.S. Senate offices. He is currently the Government Affairs Director for the Medical Associate of Georgia. Mr. Norton is a member of Smyrna City Council serving Ward Number 1 and is currently Mayor pro term for the City of Smyrna. He and his wife Laura have 2 children. Mr. Raisin has lived in Smyrna for 25 years. He is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and served for 28 years before retiring as Navy Commander. He is also a retired airline pilot flying for ValueJet, AirTran, and Southwest Airlines. He currently is a co-owner of a real estate business in Smyrna. Mr. Raisin and his wife, Diane, have 3 children and 1 grandchild.
Thank you all. I will now go over the rules and format for tonight's debate. Each candidate has been previously informed of this information, but we would like to go over once again as a reminder, as well as to inform our audience. The candidates are seated and will answer their questions in alphabetical order. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening and closing statement. In rounds 1, 2, and 3, each candidate will receive a question from our moderators and have 1 minute to answer. There are timers located in the front of the stage to let each candidate know their time, and when time is up, you will hear a bell. Just like that. In rounds 1, 2, and 3, if another candidate's name is mentioned in an answer, that candidate will have a 30-second chance for rebuttal. Rounds 4 and 5 will be the questions from the audience that I referred to earlier. Each candidate will receive a question from the moderator and have 1 minute to respond. There will be no rebuttal in those rounds. We will close with the 2-minute closing statements I mentioned earlier. Each candidate has a table of campaign materials located in the rear of the room that you are welcome to visit afterwards and meet the candidates if you would like to do so. So let's begin. Mr. Backery, you will have the first opening statement, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I hold an associate's degree from the University of Massachusetts in management. I also hold a bachelor's degree in business from Arizona State. My issues tonight are that I would like term limits, cover wasteful spending, also getting open government, and I look forward to those issues being discussed tonight. As I say, term limits and wasteful spending are my big issues. and also having an animal control officer in Smyrna, the need for that. And with that, those are my objectives if I become mayor. And I've also spoke for 16 years in council meetings, including citizens' input, and additionally 35 to 40 requests for open records acts. That's something that no one on the stage can match, that I've been involved in for 16 years with questions and getting answers to things. And I look forward to the questions at the end, as well as the comments. But I believe in knowledge is power. The last 4 elections have been 9, 15, 20 with a liquor referendum, and 20% in the last election. Pathetic. When you consider the last state election, 64% voted. Something's wrong. You have more to lose locally. And that's why I haven't given up, knowing that 20% doesn't reflect the majority. And that's important for people to finally, hopefully, get involved this time, because I feel it's apathy with lack of knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Backer.
On the issues.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. Campbell.
Thank you all so much for having us at Whitfield Academy. It's truly an honor to be here. And I speak for myself, but also for other candidates, that we are truly grateful. My name is Ryan Campbell. I grew up in Smyrna. I grew up in a community called Vinings Estates, went to Nickajack Elementary, graduated from Woodward Academy, and went on to the University of Alabama, where I got my degree in financial planning and a master's degree in marketing. But more importantly, the journey that our city has been on, I'm truly proud to have been a part of that journey and to see the growth in our city. And as we transition to a new mayor and a new city council, it's important that we lay out a positive vision for Smyrna. A vision that includes all, that takes into account the issues that we've had and the journey that we've been on, but also focuses on the future and the goals that we have to tackle and the issues that we have to get in front of. Addressing environmental protection, addressing housing affordability, addressing the consistency of density, addressing regional transportation, addressing strong schools and education. These are all issues that are really, really key and really important going forward. But it requires a coalition of all of us, and we all have to feel included at that table. And as we go forth as a community and as we go forth in this debate, I think it's important that we all have a positive mindset and that we all kind of join hand in hand and carry each other forward, because we have a lot to learn from each other. And I truly enjoy the process of not only being able to talk about your issues, but learn your concerns and learn your backgrounds. Because as we learn more, we're able to adapt and we're able to be more informed. So thank you all so much for having us. I look forward to an awesome debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Next up, Ms. Morales.
So I've been involved in a lot of things in Smyrna as well. I either attend or watch the city council meetings. I decided that I wanted to run for mayor a couple of years ago when I found out that they were going to put an expressway through our neighborhood on Windy Hill Road. They're going to spend $42 million on a 1-mile expressway. Once I started looking into that and started looking into the way that the city does business and looking into all the money that's funneled into Croy Engineering, I decided that we really needed a change. We needed to make sure that bids went to the lowest bidder and not to friends and acquaintances. We need to make sure that the city operates in a way that is fair to everyone. Presently, Ward 5, where I live, and Ward 3 don't get as many resources allocated to those areas. You rarely ever see public works projects. The sidewalks are full of holes. We've had some work done. Our city council members, Marilyn Blackburn and Susan Wilkinson, go to bat for us all the time, but their pleas for funds to be directed into our community, the same as they are into the other communities in Smyrna, pretty much go unanswered. It's like pulling teeth trying to get sidewalks repaired and potholes fixed. And I'm just sick of seeing that. So I think we need to take the city in a new direction. You can see Atlanta Road from space with all the lights, but on my street we have to turn on our porch lights to light up the streets because they're so dark. Anyway, I have a lot of great ideas of ways, kids, when you go to college, you'll learn of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you have nothing, your needs are very simple, shelter and food. When you have a lot, your needs are a little more frivolous, I suppose. But everybody has needs, and I'd like to meet the needs of all of the residents, regardless of socioeconomic
Thank you, Ms. Morales.
status.
Mr. Norton.
Good evening, everybody. Just want to say thank you to the Whitfield administration, faculty, the students, and the volunteers who worked so hard to put this on. I think this is the biggest audience to ever see a Smyrna mayoral debate, so well done. And thank you for the opportunity. I want to recognize my wife, Laura, who's here in the back, and my two children, Samantha and Jack. I think my parents are here and my in-laws too, so I really better not mess this up. I'm Derek Norton. I serve on your city council now, representing Ward 1. I'm finishing up my 4th year on the city council. I serve as your public safety committee chairman on your finance committee, and I'm currently serving as your mayor pro tem. Laura and I live about a mile west of SunTrust Park off of Spring Road, and we're members of Smyrna First United Methodist Church, where I serve on the board of trustees. I've been in Smyrna about 15 years, grew up down the road in Marietta, went to Sprayberry High School, went to the University of Georgia, and I've spent my entire professional career over the last 20 years either in government or government relations. I'm the only candidate in this race with the experience to keep the city moving in the right direction without missing a beat. And this election, experience is more important than any other in the city's history, perhaps, with the mayor retiring after 34 years and all 7 council members up for election. We don't have staggered terms in Smyrna. We're one of the few that don't, so we're going to have at least 2 new council members and possibly 4 new council members. So experience is paramount in this election. I've been to every corner of this city, learn about the issues that are important to everybody. It's consistent. It's low taxes, high services, public safety, schools, not so dense development, protect our quality of life, economic development, stereogenics, and the zip code issue here, the 30126 in Mableton. So I'm looking forward to talking about those issues and probably many others. But thank you for taking your time out of your evening to spend some time with us, be involved in the process, and get to know the candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Norton.
Thank you.
Mr. Mason.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Raisin. I usually go by Steve to differentiate myself from my son, who calls himself Stephen. Anyway, I grew up in Maryland, and I went to the Naval Academy in 1970. That was during the Vietnam War. Just thought everybody should know that I've been a person interested in service for my entire life. After graduating from the academy, I went to flight school, which was a truly joy for me. I'd never flown in an airplane until I was 18 years old and got the opportunity to do something I'd never done. I've served as a flight instructor, but I'll fast forward past that and go, I have 45 years of experience in leadership. Between flying in the Navy, I have experience at Lockheed. After I got out of the Navy, I went to Lockheed and served as an engineer for 11 years. After that, I moved to Georgia and served for 23 years as an airline pilot. So I understand what service is, I understand what taking care of people is from the time that I got out of the academy until now. As a leader, there are certain things you have to be able to do. You need to set goals. You need to be able to execute plans. You need to be able to mentor and teach people. You need to be able to do conflict resolution. Those are things that leaders do. Experience is great, but the leadership is going to be very important in this particular election because we're going to have a new mayor. No matter who gets elected, it's going to be a brand new mayor with a new city council. We're also going to have a very multicultural city. We have a multicultural city. We've got to bring everybody to the table. We want to bring all those voices to the table. And I'm going to be able to do that. I've done that in my entire life with my travels throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. We will now move to round one of candidate questions. Our student moderators will be asking these questions. And the first one is for Mr. Backer.
Candidate Backer, what is the biggest challenge you see for the city of Smyrna right now, and how will you address it? What is the biggest challenge you see for the city of Smyrna right now, and how will you address it?
I think the biggest one right now is wasteful spending. To give you an example, the city in '05 hired Croy Engineering, an outside engineering firm, to be the program manager when we have our own engineering department. If people wanted to order something from the fire department, they got to go through Croy instead of the purchasing department. The city paid them $5 million in services last year. We have an engineering department. And that's the first thing I would do the first day, is terminate that agreement. We need to cut wasteful spending and have more open government on issues and referendums. Like term limits that I've addressed, there's been no reply on a referendum. We need to get the people more involved in the decision-making on issues. And this past council group...
Thank you for your response, Mr. Backer. Our next question.
Candidate Campbell, for the past 6 years, Smyrna has received a AAA bond rating, has a balanced budget, and a surplus. How do you prioritize budget needs for the city, and do you anticipate any tax increases?
First of all, no, I don't anticipate any tax increases because our tax digest is growing at a healthy rate. Second of all, I think we have to address government spending and the allocation of resources. I do think there is a broader issue in terms of the way we allocate money and the way we spend money. And right now, Smyrna has an outstanding debt of $50 million. It has grown at a rate of about 12% a year over the past 3 years. It's grown by 40% since 2015. It's grown in stair-step fashion since 2010. And the city has a bad habit of refinancing the debt that they take out and stretching it over longer and longer durations. As mayor, here is a commitment I will make to you right now. On February 1st of 2028, Smyrna will be a debt-free city. We will not take out any due debt, and we will be completely debt-free. That is the commitment I will make on top of not raising your taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Candidate Morales, what do you see as the biggest challenge Smyrna faces regarding public safety?
Oh my gosh, that is just all encompassing. You've got everything from sterogenics and, the public safety for the schools and the homes and the businesses that live near there, which is outside of Smyrna. And we are just blessed to have the state representatives and county representatives working on that because they have decided to represent us instead of corporate interests. The main problem facing public safety is they're so low paid that they come and we train them and we equip them and then they move on to other agencies. That's police and fire. So if you look around at all the cops and firefighters, they're all very young. And then we have a gap where we should have experienced firefighters and officers, law enforcement officers, but there aren't any. And then you've got the older supervisors. So my plan would be to increase pay and benefits and make sure that when they join our fire department or our police department, they're joining for a career. We want them here. We want to keep them here.
Mr. Norton.
Candidate Norton, what is your opinion on city planning and zoning as it relates to appropriate density and future growth?
Thank you for the question. That's been one of the things that I've heard most about as we've gone around the city. My message is we've got to pump the brakes on the dense development. I've heard more from people about that than anything else. When we tear down a single-story ranch home and put 10 or 15 or 20 townhomes in its place, that puts so many more cars on the road, so much pressure on our infrastructure and schools, and we've got to think a little more holistically and long-term. Otherwise, we're gonna have the best mix of uses anywhere, and it won't do anybody any good because we won't be able to get to any of them. So there's a quality of life balance there, and so I'm gonna work to slow down the dense development. and make sure that we're still able to enjoy our quality of life. Thanks for the question.
Mr. Mason.
Candidate Raisin, with a new mayor and many new council members being elected this November, how do you plan to work with a new group to create a unifying and cohesive team who gets things done?
Thank you for that question. That is something that I've thought about quite a bit since deciding to run for mayor. Being in a leadership position, you really have to know the people that you're going to be working with, find out as much as you can about them, and understand the jobs that they have to do. One of the good things about being mayor of this city is that you don't have to know everything. You have a staff that's going to be able to help you through some of those rough spots and get you through some of the tough areas, the tough decisions, but you do have other people to help you with those types of decisions. One of the things that I've done over the years as a naval officer and a pilot, I've been able to work with just about anybody. People from very, very, very backgrounds. It has become easy for me, and I find that very, very welcoming and very enjoyable for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for concluding the end of round one. Round two is coming up. This is a reminder, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please write them on the cards that are available on your seats, and we'll try to make some more available to you. We will be taking those up after this round, and we will be taking a short break between rounds 2 and 3 so we can collect those. We're going to go back to Mr. Backery to answer round 2 question for you.
Candidate Backery, given the explosive population growth in Cobb County, what are the plans for easing traffic congestion in Smyrna, specifically on residential streets?
I'd have to check with the department on that, what they're doing. I'm against this Amtrak or what have you. I think that there's no place to even park to get on the Amtrak. So we're kind of at a disadvantage. I see about only thing I can suggest at the moment without looking at a project is maybe putting in an additional light here and there, traffic light. But I don't see widening the streets is going to help. We're kind of in a rock and a hard place on that. But at the moment, I really would have to look at, see on a one-to-one basis what they propose. We're talking to the experts on that and see if we can come up with the same mindset.
Thank you, Mr. Backery. Mr. Campbell, the next question is for you.
Candidate Campbell, what does linking the Silver Comet Trail to the Atlanta Boat Line look for Smyrna? And what do you perceive as some of the pros and cons?
Yeah, so this is something that I talk about with a lot of communities. We, as a community, have to start talking about connectivity and regional integration as a part of our broader Smyrna vision. Right now, we have a lot of different siloed developments in Smyrna and a lot of siloed communities. It's important that going forward that we start connecting these communities so that we can unleash the economic development aspect of our community. So I live on the northern end of Smyrna, which is the least developed, and it's one of the poorest wards. But there is a lot of new development going in. So I live in a community called Smyrna Grove. A mile down the road is Belmont Hills. We need to start connecting the village at Belmont to Smyrna Grove, to Smyrna Market Village, and connect it into the Battery. And we need to have a citywide trail system that connects all the economic and neighborhood wards eventually into the Silver Comet and into the Beltline, so there's a natural synergy and a runway for growth going forward that doesn't require us to drive around.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Morales, the question's for you.
Candidate Morales, it is safe to say that Sterigenics has been a hot topic lately. Even though we know Sterigenics is not located in Smyrna, what responsibility does the city and its leaders have to protect and inform its residents on issues like this?
Well, I think they're doing a good job right now. The city has joined with the City of Atlanta and Cobb County to privately pay for air monitoring. And even though the plant isn't operational now, they've done some baseline tests so that they know what the normal readings are without the plant in operation. And Hopefully it won't be back in operation, but if it is, we can monitor those results. I think it's also important that we stay in contact with Commissioner Ott and Representatives Allen and, oh my gosh, Jen Jordan, and make sure that we are able to report back to the citizens on the progress that's being made. You know, one thing that I noticed is Sterigenics on their certificate of occupancy filed as a storage facility. So it probably was overlooked and no one paid any attention to it. So what I'm wondering is how accurate are the certificate of occupancies for all of the other buildings in the industrial parks that are near our residents?
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Our next question is from Mr. Norton.
Candidate Norton, as a candidate for mayor, what are your top 3 priorities for the city?
It's tough to narrow it to 3, but I'll try. We've already spoken about one, and that's pumping the brakes on the dense development. Public safety. I'm a public safety chair. That's really important to me. We've had a couple of years ago. Y'all didn't probably even know we were about 70% staffed on the police side, and we put in some recruitment and retention incentives so that people wouldn't go down the road into other cities after we trained them. And for the first time in 20 years, I'm proud to say we're almost fully staffed. So that's an important issue to me. And then the other thing that I've heard a lot about is our schools, and I think we need to have a loud voice get everybody together that's advocating for our kids in our schools and have a loud voice with the Cobb County School Board to affect change. Not say, look, we don't want any more than anybody else is getting, but at least give us our fair share and keep up with the growth that Smyrna is experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Raisin, your question.
Candidate Raisin, how do you plan to capitalize on Smyrna's growth in continuing the work of Smyrna's 2040 comprehensive plan?
Smyrna's comprehensive plan is a very good idea. What I think I'd like to do is, number one, be very specific on which businesses that we bring into the city. If you bring in high technology businesses, other retail businesses, small businesses. I come from a background of small business. My grandfather and my father owned small businesses in the small town that I grew up in. It's very important that we go out to these small businesses and help them make sure they're going to be successful. If they're successful, our tax base is going to go up, we're going to earn more money, and it's going to keep our taxes low.
Thank you, Mr. Raisin. Having now concluded round 2, we are going to begin round 3. And we'll begin with another question for Mr. Backery. Mr. Backery, this question is for you.
Candidate Backery, what groups, civic, church, business, are you involved with, and why are they important to you? Yes, sir. What groups, civic, church, business, are you involved with, and why are they important to you?
Well, the groups are important to me are the ones that ask the questions like I do on open government. And I've surveyed 723 people, and only 27 knew who the council person was. So I find that if people don't know who the council person is, you need to have town hall meetings every 5 months in order to keep the people interested in the local activities. Knowledge is power, and I just find that the people, since they don't know who their council people are, our current council mayor hasn't had a city town hall meeting in over 10 years. Pathetic. I think it's time for open government where we listen to the people, and my group works on spreading the word on that to get involved in local government.
The next question is for Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, this question is for you.
Candidate Campbell, the office of mayor requires a lot of your personal time and not much money. Why do you want this job?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's critical that as we transition to a new mayor, that we set a new vision for our city. We have young families here, we have new entrepreneurs here, and we have established folks here. And we need to be able to bridge the gap between young and old, between black and white, and between rich and poor. And as a person who's grown up in this community, who's had the opportunity to succeed and to sit on the stage, I think it's critical that we're able to preserve and expand that opportunity going forward. That's why I want to run for this office. There's a lot of offices to run for, but mayor and city council is where the rubber meets the road. It's where we can set stability in terms of our tax code. It's where we can ensure that our streets are walkable, where we can push for regional transportation and collaboration, where we can talk about setting arts district and innovations district to bring new people here. And I think it's critical that we have a mayor who understands that we are fighting for the future and we are competing against others, and I'm ready to take on that fight.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Ms. Morales, next question is for you.
Candidate Morales, give me an example of when you thought out of the box. How did this help or hinder your company or organization?
Oh my gosh, it's daily. I'm a flooring company and I own a flooring business and a store. And for example, today I have job sites all over the city and I was driving all over. The guy started installing a Brazilian cherry floor and they got about 4 boxes in, and the next box they opened is much lighter. So then what do you do in that case? I said, mix some of the light ones in with the dark ones, and then as you go along to the next room, mix more, because Brazilian cherry all turns deep red anyway. But if it hasn't been exposed to sunlight, it's going to be much lighter. So there was that, and then I had another contractor I was working for, and he had an issue with, did he set the counters up too high or just right, and I went in there and they were just right. And so it's just daily problem solving things. But my job right now, I do have leadership because I do have so many subcontracting companies under me. But prior to that, when I was with the Atlanta Braves in the 91 and 92 season, I had over 500 employees under my...
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Appreciate that. Next question is for Mr. Norton.
Candidate Norton, in 5 years, I will graduate from college. Why should I, as a recent college graduate, move back to Smyrna?
You don't find a whole lot of people trying to move out of Smyrna. They're all trying to move back in or move in, and that's because of the great foundation that we've had set here by our predecessors, including Max Bacon. I see Craig Brooks out there with an I Love Bacon shirt. Thanks for sporting that tonight. You should move back here because we've got so many great things to offer. We're a growing community with a solid foundation and all kinds of potential. Our downtown is going to get a new shot of energy, so we'll have a great entertainment district for young people to enjoy. Our schools have a great story to tell, and they're getting even better. So when you raise your family here, like I'm going to raise my family here, you'll have great schools to put them through, and it's just generally we're on the map now. It's a great place to be, and that's why you should move back here.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Raisin, this question is for you.
Candidate Raisin, what are you currently reading, and what is your favorite book?
What am I currently reading? There's lots of things that I read pretty much every day. A lot of times it's the newspaper to stay up on current events. And one of the most important current events to me right now is the Sterigenics plant. We're suffering through a lack of information from the government and that plant being over there. I had a chance to go to a meeting about that plant several months ago, and the CEO of the company was there, and he spoke, and the information that he provided to our citizens was insufficient. That to me is a blatant disregard for our health, the ability to live in a safe environment is paramount. So that particular plant, if we can determine that it's going to be safe, fine. But if it can't be safe, it needs to be shut down.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I now have questions from the audience I'm going to give to our student moderators. Just as a heads up, this first question is going to be for all the candidates, so each of you will have 1 minute to answer this first question, and then the questions will proceed from there.
Candidates, please share how, as a resident of Smyrna in Cobb County, how you have served as a volunteer on a committee or group to be better for our community.
We're going to start with Mr. Backery. Would you like the question one more time?
I'm sorry.
The first question is we're going to start with you and move across. We're going to ask the question one more time.
Oh, okay.
As a resident of Smyrna in Cobb County, how have you served as a volunteer on a committee or group to better our community?
Mine, I guess, would be a better approach is after doing so many requests in Open Records Act is passing information out to people of what's going on in City Hall. And to my amazement, the lack of knowledge informing the public, so they try and get involved in the local issues. And that's the way I have approached it. Again, I'm amazed at the number of people that don't even know what ward they're in. I feel such a lack of communication between City Hall and the public. And so I've been kind of a liaison, if you will, informing the people of the issues in Smyrna mainly, and keeping them educated and motivated to try and vote, especially in this election.
Thank you, Mr. Backery. Mr. Campbell.
No, so outstanding question, and it's critical that the next mayor and your city council members are always involved at the local level, not just in government, but outside of government. For me, it started, I have a passion for teaching financial literacy. I think no matter where you come from, understanding how money works and how to save money is critical. So I founded a company called Uplift Financial, which focuses on young families and lower income families, helping them save money and build towards the future. I was a co-founder of Sustainable Smyrna. I serve on the Cobb Transit Board, and from an experience standpoint and from a government agent standpoint, I serve on the Smyrna Housing Authority. So I have different experiences, but from personal perspective, environmental protection and sustainability is one of the things that I love to highlight as we continue to fight for clean air and clean water going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Mayoral, your question.
Okay, well, I've been school council president twice at Belmont Hills Elementary. I serve on the Smyrna United Task Force. I attend the meetings that Lisa Cupid has for our district up in Cobb, up in where we are. I volunteer at the school as needed. I train for the audiology, giving those tests to the kids, so I'll be doing that. But more than that, because we really do have problems getting any type of assistance in our community. People from my neighborhood and my community come to me to help them with problems, whether it's housing issues or people who are homeless and need resources or other things. They know that they can call on me and I'll direct them to whatever agency might be able to help them. And once I'm mayor, I would like to form a coalition of faith-based agencies, businesses, and city government to provide resources for people in the community that perhaps, you might be a woman who's a victim of domestic violence.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Mr. Norton, to you.
Thank you for the question. I know my wife is in the back probably laughing because I can't say no to a volunteer opportunity. I've got a long record of volunteer work in the city. Way before I even thought about council, I was my HOA president for 5 years because I'm a glutton for punishment, because I wanted my neighborhood to be great. I've served on the boards of directors for the Keep Smyrna Beautiful, for Smyrna Education Foundation, Smyrna Business Association, and the Public Safety Foundation. I served on the executive committee for the Smyrna Vision process, and I serve on my church board of trustees, and then I've had 4 years on the city council. So I love this town. I try to put myself in positions where I can affect change and help, and I'm not volunteering for anything else, Lord, don't worry.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Raisin.
When we first moved to our home here in Smyrna, one of the first things that I did was notice that the front of the subdivision needed a little sprucing up. So with my sons, we started a small business where they were able to cut the grass, And it grew from just the front of the subdivision to about 10 homes. After they saw me do that, they forced me to be the HOA treasurer. I did that probably for about 10 years and then I served as the Architecture Review Committee chairman. I've also been serving as a member of the Civilian Review Board with the police department to review the use of force by police officers. Chief Lee asked me to do that, and I gladly volunteered to serve in that capacity. I've attended over the years many career days for aviation. Many students, and as well as adults, don't really understand what it takes to be a pilot, whether it's in the military or civilian, and I'm happy to go and do those types of things. I also serve on the Sustainable Smyrna Board.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Next question, we'll start back with Mr. Backery.
Candidate Backer, do you believe the infrastructures of Smyrna are capable of sustaining Smyrna's recent growth? And do you believe growth of infrastructure should come before growth of the city?
Would you like us to repeat that question? Yes, please repeat the question.
Do you believe the infrastructures of Smyrna are capable of sustaining Smyrna's recent growth? And do you believe growth of infrastructure should come before growth of the city?
That's a good question. Certainly traffic has been difficult. I mean, this case on Windy Hill where you're adding a lane for $42 million. I've surveyed 351 people. Not one of them knew any facts on the Windy Hill issue. You'd have to have the input from the people, but the people got to know to have a chance to vote on issues like Windy Hill. The city's already spent $21 million so far. And I'd like to put that question on Mr. Norton, why the city never had a referendum to educate the people on the Windy Hill. When it was first voted on, it was a concept. Now at 42 million going up, we've had no say in it. You need to have the people have the right to say on how their money's being spent.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Mr. Norton, your rebuttal, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd be glad to answer that. The Windy Hill project is a $42 million joint project with the county that is not adding one lane. It's creating a straight-through road with elevated local lanes from South Cobb to Atlanta Road. It has been a transparent process through the Downtown Development Authority, and I just think he's factually inaccurate with the description of how that's gone. And I'm looking forward to that project. It's going to be transformative for that area of the city. We'll have a linear park on the northern end. Don't worry, the Old South Barbecue's not going anywhere. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Next question is to Mr. Campbell.
What is your plan to help the Smyrna Market Village become a hotspot destination for Smyrna citizens?
So the first thing I'll say is money flows to where productivity is created. And so what we have in Smyrna right now, as compared to Marietta, is that we have a downtown that's not experiential, that's not dynamic, and lacks the transformative vision, and lacks the ability to have an anchor tenant to drive it forward. One thing that I've pitched is establishing an arts district, leveraging the innovation and the creativity that's in the community to draw more people towards the downtown and bring a vitality that the government cannot, regardless of what they say, put in place. I also talk about establishing an innovation district in the downtown and bringing more co-working spaces so that you can have a collaborative workspace that also helps foster the downtown. If we are going to transform the downtown, it has to be dynamic, it has to be engaging, and we have to draw people in. And right now, we are losing to our competitors or to our sister cities like Marietta and Brookhaven because we don't have that experiential downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Morales, the next question is for you.
Although SunTrust Park isn't in Smyrna city limits, the roads surrounding it are. How are you planning to address the massive traffic boom through Smyrna, especially on the north side?
Thank you for that question. Well, one thing that I've been advocating for is synchronized traffic lights. When you get on the main arteries, and I have studied traffic a bit when I was in Sandy Springs. It's a long story, I'll tell you. about it. I was part of revitalization Sandy Springs initially. And so when you have traffic that's all backed up and you're sitting way back here and there's all these red lights and you're sitting at a green light, you can see ahead and further that the reason you're sitting at a green light is because the next light is red and everybody else, you know, is being held up. If you had synchronized traffic signals so that the traffic could move through the city that needs to go through the city, it's going to ease the traffic. You're not going to have traffic sitting there with exhaust fuming into your neighborhoods. But the answers that I get from the city is, well, this is a county road and this road's controlled by DOT and this road's controlled by the city. There has absolutely been no effort to collaborate with other agencies to accomplish anything in this city, and that's what's needed. So that would be my solution for traffic.
Thank you, Ms. Morrow. Mr. Norton, the next question is to you.
Candidate Norton, what's your vision for Smyrna's arts and culture scene?
That's a great question. We've been working with the Arts and Culture Committee. They're trying to find a home, right? They don't know where. It's kind of the chicken or the egg. They don't know where their home will be, and until they have a home, they won't be able to do what they want to do. So my vision and what I've talked to them about is taking notes from other communities that have formed good partnerships with their arts and culture community. For instance, Sugar Hill, and our assistant city administrator just happens to be from there and has worked there. To not reinvent the wheel here, but to figure out, have them come meet with us and say, okay, this is how we do it here. Here's some notes, you know, as far as funding and going back and forth to make sure that we have a robust public arts and culture program. And then I want to make sure that we have funding available for Performing Arts Center. I tried to get one down by Cumberland, where Cumberland Community Church was, and was unsuccessful, but we'll get one here coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Raisin, the next question is to you.
Candidate Raisin, why is so little attention paid to upgrading Smyrna's 3-decade-old outdated roads?
That's a great question. And I wish I had the greatest answer that we could get. But it's amazing to me that Smyrna's roads, while some of them are very good, some of them really aren't. Some of the neighborhoods that I drive through seem to get all of the money while some of the others don't. If you look at some of the neighborhoods in my ward, they just don't do too much to them. I can't understand why the city council doesn't, across the board, go and just look at all the roads, prioritize which ones really needed the most and start there. That's what I would do if I were in charge of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Raisin. That concludes the questions for round 4. We are now going to enter into our final round of questions. Mr. Backery, the first question will come to you, and we will proceed again in alphabetical order.
Understandably, each of you has a platform that includes plans for Smyrna's growth. Will you please explain how you will ensure that we have contracted growth, that we will not overburden the city's infrastructures like watery sewage, traffic, sanitation, etc.?
In fact, I'm going to actually open that question up to all the candidates because I think we would all benefit from hearing your responses. We're going to ask the question one more time just so everyone can have a chance to digest it.
Understandably, each of you has a platform that includes plans for Smyrna's growth. Will you please explain how you will ensure that we have contracted growth, that we will not have overburdened city infrastructures like watery sewage, traffic, sanitation, etc.?
Mr. Backery, the question will go to you first.
Me first.
Yes, sir.
Well, the one thing that I see in the city, we need more shopping. We have Big Lot and also Dollar. But you see empty stores like Ruby Tuesdays, Piccadilly's. I would go to some of these other areas like Hiram's, committees and find out the incentives to bring business to Smyrna. There are a lot of empty stores in Smyrna that should be, I think, filled very nicely, but it's not being done, and I see that this current administration has failed to go out and really try and get businesses to come in here when you see these empty stores, and we certainly have room for them. And that's the way I would approach it, trying to fill the empty businesses and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Beckery. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, so from the perspective of growth, I think the Atlanta metro area, depending on where you are, is growing at 1 to 2% a year. In Smyrna, we're growing closer to 2%. And what's happened is that the growth has put a strain on the infrastructure because we weren't prepared for the growth. From a planning perspective, we have to have consistency in our zoning and our density ordinances. And that has been one of the biggest issues that has arisen with the city council so far, is that the density and the zoning of our city constantly changes. We also haven't done a good job of growing the educational infrastructure to keep up with the growth. If you look at where the growth is happening in Cobb, and it's within the South Cobb region, we have to make sure that the Smyrna vision also overlaps with the Cobb County vision, particularly on education. And that means we have to make investments in education and increasing the productivity of our roads going forward so that we can have a more equitable, steady growth rate that is controlled overall.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Morales.
So what we've had happening in Smyrna is, we've got some zoning, but the developers come in and they request changes to the zoning, and of course they're approved because the biggest developer is also the head of the zoning committee. And so we have all kinds of high density growth. They're putting all kinds of townhomes, condos, apartments everywhere when the roads are already filled to capacity. The schools are bursting at the seams. We have an old water and sewer system, and when that goes bad, it's going to be a huge problem. The Cobb County station has begun charging more to dump trash because, you know, they're running out of space for all of the garbage. We are, you know, we need smart growth, not just growth. We need to also preserve some of the older neighborhoods and the tree canopies. And we need to stop this infill housing with McMansions coming in next to, you know, 900 square foot homes. I can tell you, and I'll mention Norton, and I know that he's going to get his 30 seconds, but he hasn't voted no on a single zoning request against the high density.
Mr. Norton, I'm going to give you a 30-second rebuttal, and then you may answer the question.
I'll say this all the time. My rebuttal will be part of my response. If that's okay, just add that 30 seconds on to my response, please. So my answer to that question is the pressure on the infrastructure to alleviate that is to control density. And my opponent mentioned that I've not voted against any proposed rezoning, and I'm just going to give two examples, and one of them is one that I actually did vote against. The Cumberland Church site on Sports Drive over there by Highway 41, that was going to be 325 apartment units, and I worked to defeat that, voted against it. There was only one council member that voted for it, in fact. And now the result is a third of the density. There's 108 owned units there. It's not my favorite project, but at least we don't have 325 apartments there.
Yeah, but you were
the other one, for the apartment project?
No, not for the apartment, but that is a very high density project that got a public.
I didn't know that we were going to have a back and forth like that.
Well, I think it's important that people really know.
Mr. Campbell.
So I tried after the 325 apartments was denied, and I led the effort to do that. The church came to me and said, hey, we got 12 acres here, would the city want to buy it? And I thought it'd be a great idea for a performing arts center. There's a 600-seat theater in there. It was 78,000 square foot building where we could have offered all kinds of opportunities, but I was not successful with that. But the end result, somebody bought it and put 108 owned units there. There wasn't anything the city could do to say no at that point. Legally, we would have never passed any scrutiny. The other thing I wanted to mention is y'all have a development right down the road that's being proposed. Did I get the extra 30 seconds or no?
We added the extra 30 seconds.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, I'm not in favor of the annexation because that would be extra zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Raisin, your response.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, sir.
Understandably, each of you has a platform that includes plans for Smyrna's growth. Will you please explain how you will ensure that we have contracted growth that will not overburden the city's infrastructures like water, sewage, traffic, sanitation, etc.?
One of the big problems that I see in Smyrna is high-density areas. I guess there was a moratorium on apartment buildings that got removed several years ago, but it doesn't seem like the city really paid too much attention to putting high-density areas in anyway. Not apartments, but townhomes, condos, that sort of thing. And those are very, very high-priced homes. Some of those houses, or some of those townhomes are pretty much unaffordable for most of the people like yourself if you want to move back into Smyrna. But one thing that really bothers me is that the city council doesn't really understand that we want a safe city with more green spaces. We want to have areas where people can walk their dogs, ride their bikes, do that sort of thing. We need more of those types of things in the city. One of the first things that I found out when I moved here from California is that we seem to do it backwards. They build the houses first and build the streets second.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Now we will move to questions per candidate. First question, Mr. Backer, the question is to you.
Candidate Backer. Social media is used a lot for community engagement, surveys, town halls, this debate, etc. What is your plan to reach marginalized citizens, those with limited internet access, the elderly, bilingual, and so on?
I'm sorry.
One more time. Social media is used a lot for community engagement, surveys, town halls, this debate. What is your plan to reach marginalized citizens, those with limited internet access, the elderly, bilingual?
Well, open government is the priority for me. The people have to be listened to and feel that they're involved in politics. This current administration has failed badly in doing that. I've spoken citizens' input on this with no comment back from them to encourage getting the people into, again, city town hall meetings where we can break down the apathy. I've asked 97 people, do you know what days of the month the council gets together for meetings? At night, 2. I find this pitiful that the lack of knowledge has created such apathy, and it's been like this the last 4 elections. And I just hope the people finally listen to having open government.
Thank you, Mr. Backer.
And feeling part of
Mr.
it.
Campbell, this next question is for you.
With the national administration that has given up on the climate crisis, how important is it for cities to work on environmental protection?
So this is a big focus of mine, and environmental protection has been a passion of mine for a long time. So what we're seeing with stereogenics right now is that stereogenics is a piece of a broader puzzle that cities across the country are starting to realize exists. There has been over the last 5 years, we've dealt with Plant Atkinson dumping coal ash into the Chattahoochee. We've had companies dumping toxins into Nickajack Creek, and now we have stereogenics. The reason this has happened is because from a federal level, we've gutted the EPA, and at a state level, we've gutted the EPD, and now we're starting to see the trickle-down effects. This cannot just be a city fight. It has to be a regional fight. Right now, there is no regional collaboration in terms of environmental protection issues. If I'm elected mayor, that is one of the first things that I want to work on, because clean water and clean air is a human right, and that we all need to be in the battle to protect our water and our air, and it's important that we do just that.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Morales, this next question is for you.
Candidate Morales, how do you specifically plan on changing the zip code for the hundreds of residents, including the school, who are Smyrna citizens, pay Smyrna taxes, and yet have a Mableton zip code?
Okay, so I've actually spoken with the Postal Service about this, and I know that you all over here had a petition, and there was a compromise reached back in 2017 between Mayor Bacon and the city of Smyrna, and the people who are in Mableton, who are actually within the city limits of Smyrna, but have the Mableton name and zip code on there. So the compromise was that you can put Smyrna, and then still use that zip code. I don't feel like that's adequate. You are Smyrna citizens, you are Smyrna residents, and you are within our city. So what I'd like to do is go back and appeal that. You have a new division manager with the Postal Service now who's in charge of this area. And I understand you've hired a lawyer to go back and appeal it, but now I feel like since you have someone else who can make the decision, that you should, you're able to submit a letter, submit a request, stating that you are residents of Smyrna, and there's no reason for you to have a Mableton zip code. We're not asking to have another post office.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Mr. Norton, this question's to you.
Candidate Norton, what is your position on sustainability for the city of Smyrna?
I think a lot of people have different ideas and definitions about sustainability. To me, that means being environmentally sound, and water conservation, energy conservation. That's what that's always meant to me. I think a lot of folks have used the sustainability banner to put a lot of social programs and push their social agendas. And I think a lot of the things that are trying to be pushed are important, but they deserve consideration on their own merit, not lumped under sustainability. So for the city, for me, I'm looking forward to getting us into this millennium, really, on conservation with water, our city buildings, water conservation and energy conservation. We spend about double. It's about $1.98 per square foot, $1.98 per square foot on energy, and we need to get that down to the average, which is $1 a square foot. So I'm going to be working to control the things that we can control immediately and have an impact as soon as we hit the ground running January 1. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Raisin, the final question from the audience is for you tonight.
Candidate Raisin, what is your stance on state or federal government grants which could fund a public transportation system specific to the city of Smyrna?
Thank you for that question. Public transportation, I think, is important in all metropolitan areas. Although Smyrna is not in a large downtown area like the city of Atlanta, we do have transportation issues. In driving to work, in driving home, there's way too much traffic. If we can get money from the federal government to assist us, to get money from the state government to assist us, collaborate with the county, I think that it would be a good idea to have mass transit that helps the citizens within the city of Smyrna to move more quickly. I also think that there can be ways to do it with innovation. Sequenced lights have been mentioned before. That's a great idea. Other types of innovation can happen, but we do need to have some innovation along with the other monies that can come from the government to ease all the traffic that we have going on in Smyrna.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. That concludes the questions portion of tonight's debate. Please join me in giving these candidates a round of applause. Now we will have 2 minutes for our closing statements. We'll again start with Mr. Backery, closing statement for 2 minutes, at the conclusion of which I will dismiss us with a brief word of prayer.
First of all, I'd like to explain that I'm not a politician. I'm a problem solver. And that's very important that I feel people know that. Secondly, with a $55 million bond debt, that's going to take a lot of work to reduce it because of bad purchases with apartment complexes that the people in Smyrna never had a say in. You have to need a candidate that's going to be in there to be available 24/7. And I'd like to know how Mr. Norton, who is a full-time lobbyist, that I feel is a conflict of interest, being full-time, how he's going to give proper time to the job as mayor. Every minute counts, or every day counts in time. And there's no way, to me, that you can have a full-time job and give us the proper time locally. Again, I want to stress, like many other people, that being a lobbyist is a conflict of interest. And I think that I'd love to have him explain and justify that it isn't a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Mr. Campbell, your 2 minutes.
So thank you to Whitfield Academy and to everybody who came out to be a part of the democratic process. I think what we have in this election is a choice in terms of how we want to move forward. Do we buy into the idea where the citizens are the heroes of their own story, or do we feel like we need to elect saviors to the government? I believe that the answers to our long-term problems are right here in this audience and right here in the city. Leveraging artists by establishing an arts district, talking about establishing an innovation district so we can bring co-working spaces and the new wave of entrepreneurs here, where we talk about putting environmental protection and sustainability at the core of how we act by making it a priority at City Hall, where we talk about paying down our $50 million bond debt by making a firm commitment on when we pay it off, where we talk about regional transportation and forging collaboration between businesses and people to create efficiencies within our city. That is the vision that we've laid out. A vision that is positive, that is inspiring, and that makes people the hero of their own story. And as we move forward and as you vote, I ask you to consider, do you want to be voting, you want to vote for something? What do you want to have people you can hold accountable? And what I can say as a candidate and as a person who's grown up here is that opportunity has been at the core of who I am and how I got here. And I think it's critical that the next mayor opens up new doors of opportunity for the next generation so that we can look back and be proud of what we accomplished.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Mayoral, your 2 minutes.
Okay, I was going to say that because once I decided to be Smyrna mayor, I started going to all these different committee meetings. They've got committees working on things like the identity for Smyrna, for transportation for Smyrna, all these different things. I started going to these committees and I saw how passionate the citizens of Smyrna are about really taking Smyrna to the next level, and I would love to lead that. We need public art, and we've got such a strong arts community. We need to have affordable housing and stop trying to push people out of the city just because they're poor or because they are marginalized. You don't get to choose the citizens. The citizens choose the leaders. There's been so much that could have been done. Where have you been? You've been on city council for 4 years. Where are all these great proposals then? We did that huge roads project on Spring Road and on Atlanta Road, no protected bike lanes whatsoever. We're still thinking about people being in cars all the time. That's 20th century thinking. We need 21st century thinking where people are walking, people are biking, people are using public transportation, people are getting out of their cars. I want to revitalize the market village. I want to personally go out and draw businesses in that will draw you all in. I want to create jobs because when you close down 100 small businesses on Windy Hill Road, you lost over 500 jobs of people in the community. I want to bring small businesses to the market village and create jobs here and have people come from all over and spend their money here in Smyrna. I bought this dress, whether you like it or not, in the Marietta Square at a little boutique because I love going around and just goofing around.
Mr. Norton, your 2 minutes.
Man, where do I start? Should have brought some armor with me. I'm going to spend just a second clearing the air on a thing that I think I need to clear the air on. I am a lobbyist. I'm a government affairs representative for the Medical Association of Georgia. I represent patients and physicians down at the Capitol. There's folks that have tried to make that a bad thing, but in no way does my professional job intersect with what I do at the local government level, and if it ever did, I would recuse myself from the vote. This is not a new thing. The mayor of Sandy Springs is a lobbyist. There's a council member on Sugar Hill that's a lobbyist. I actually think it's a positive because the relationships I have down at the Capitol as far as what I can get done for the city. A lot of shots taken at this administration, but I don't know about y'all, but I feel like we got a pretty good thing going here in Smyrna. There's been talk about the bond debt, which is a fiscally responsible way to do low interest projects over time. And what's not been mentioned, which I think is pretty important, is that we're a AAA bond rated city and we have $23 million in surplus too. So we are good stewards of your money. We haven't raised the millage rate since 1991. I pledge not to do that either, and we continue to provide great services. The foundation that Mayor Bacon has built here has put us on the map. We're recognized as one of the best top 50 places in the country to live. You'd have never thought that late 80s, early 90s. So as mayor, I'll continue the tradition and foundation and move us into the next phase of our development here. We have a ton of potential. And I'll stress again what I said in my opening remarks. This election is critical to the direction of our city, and experience matters. I am the only candidate in this race with the experience to keep us moving on the right path. I want to say thank you once again to Whitfield and to everybody here tonight, everybody that made this possible. We really appreciate the opportunity to come before you, and thank you for being involved in the process. This is what it's all about. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mason, you have the last remarks.
It's good being last. I'm going to do my best not to make this into a food fight. When I decided to run to be mayor of Smyrna, I wanted to be a statesman, not a politician. We can turn on the television almost any day and see all the problems that's going on the national level or state level with the politicians that we have today. One of the things that they don't do very well is work together. That's one of the things that I've done for 45 years. I'm not going to say that I would be a great... I'm sorry.
Please continue.
I'm not going to say that everything is going to go perfect the first day I step in, but it's going to go great over time. I have experience of 45 years, like I said, in leadership, solving problems, working with a diverse group of people, and know experience isn't the only thing that counts when you're going to be the leader of a city. It's your leadership ability as well as your experience. It's your ability to work with people, all people. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever your background is. That is what is important, that you get all those people working together. It's a known fact that when you get people to collaborate like that, you get better results. It's absolutely true, you get better results. We need better results in Smyrna. Yes, we've done well for the last 30 or so years, but we can do a whole lot better. And we need to get a new direction to do that. And I plan on doing that the first day I'm elected mayor of Smyrna.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. I appreciate that. We would like to thank all of our candidates for joining us tonight, for your willingness to serve our great city, and for the time and effort you have given to this race. You're in our prayers as we approach Election Day, November 5th. Everyone remember to get out and vote. Let's give them one more round of applause. I will close this now in a brief word of prayer. Lord Jesus, we are thankful for people who care about one another. We thank you for the folks represented here who care about this city, who care about the folks in this room. We ask that your will be done and that we come together as a community to support whoever the leader is in our election November 5th. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.